The Oklahoma Sooners don't have a 2026 commitment from inside the state of Oklahoma borders. Why is that?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to be talking about two primary points with the Oklahoma Sooners, the team that I'm going to feature. As each day, we're going to talk about major college football teams all the way up until kickoff in August. The Sooners, what's going on with in-state recruiting? Why don't they have an in-state commitment? They're ranked number 42 by the 24/7 recruiting rankings. We're going to dive into it. There are a few players that I really like, but we do have some questions. On the backside, we're also going to discuss Brent Venables being on the hot seat. How much has that impacted recruiting, but also this season? And more importantly, they bring in John Mateer from Washington State, his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. They get some good players like Jay Knott. They've got a lot of talent coming back that was injured. Obviously, that was a big problem. You still got Bowe Bentley as your offensive line coach, arguably the best in the nation. Can they navigate a very difficult 2025 schedule? For those who don't know, last year's SEC slate, whatever teams you played at home, this year you will play them on the road, and then the road teams you will play at home. So it is going to be difficult. But again, we start with recruiting. The Sooners don't have an in-state commitment. Why? How is that possible with a tradition-rich program like the Sooners? I just don't understand that, because they have such a history, and it's such an important part of the community within the Sooner State. I don't understand that. So the first thing I want to say is that's unacceptable. There's no reason there aren't at least a couple of kids in that state. You can't tell me that none of them grew up Oklahoma fans. I'm not buying that. Further, you can't tell me that there isn't at least a few of those guys on staff, back office, that didn't want some of those players. Something is amiss. And I fully understand Venables being on the hot seat does not help. Totally get it. But to have zero, that's a problem. With that being stated, I just want to go over a few guys that I like in the class, and it's not going to surprise you that I focus on defense. Venables, Bates, just that staff defensively, they get it done. I'm going to talk about some stats here in a little bit with them, but Matthew Nelson out of Bryan, Arkansas, really good edge player, underrated. Arkansas kids really don't get scouted. He's 6'4", 215, something like that, 220. Daniel Norman, another kid about the same size, maybe just a teeny bit lighter, plays at famed St. Thomas Aquinas down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Another edge kid that's really strong. He holds the point of attack, and he's twitchy. He's been coached up well. He plays at one of the premier high school football programs in the nation. And they also have a big guy, too, Brian Harris, a kid, again, from the state of Florida. I believe he's at Mandarin up there in Jacksonville. A kid I saw at Under Armour. If you're going to have a three-man line at this point, and maybe you want to add one more, maybe two, that's a pretty good starting point. They've got some good players overall in the class, but I wanted to mention that. This is the strength of Oklahoma's class. You get a kid locally, somewhat, Arkansas, it's right next to you. Then you get a couple Floridians. That's not a bad way to go. But with their class overall, I do have some concerns, and it's really a bit surprising beyond just the situation in state. You got some pretty good balance. That's the good news, and I really like Bowe Bentley. I will definitely talk about Bowe here in a minute. But wide receiver, you've only got one committed, really good player. Not going to say that it's not, but you've got a really good player. The question is, can you keep him? His name's Daniel Odom, another elite program. He's from St. John Bosco out in the greater Los Angeles area. That's arguably a top 10 program nationally, much like SDA. Great player there, but you've only got one. You've got receiver concerns. You had all those injuries last year. Anything that could go wrong did. Several of those kids left. You still have some guys coming back like Jaden Gibson. He's a Floridian they had several years ago. He was banged up last year. He's expected to be back. There aren't many 6'5", 6'6" kids like him. If he's healthy, that's going to help you this season. Again, we'll get into that in a minute. But this is a really unique scenario where you've got playing time to sell. You bring in an offense coordinator you really like. You've got a quarterback committed now. Why aren't there more receiver commits? I'm concerned about that. You do have a tight end that is pledged to your program as well. It's not a kid that I'm personally familiar with. Ryder Mix, a kid out of Lone Star. It's a really good program in Frisco, Texas, which is just north edge of Dallas. Fits the Oklahoma profile to a T. But that's not a guy that I think is necessarily going to be an impact player. But they've had some really good tight ends, so he's got a lot to live up with in the future. But he's a 3-star kid. I don't know how much I put into that. Being where he's at, I'd imagine Oklahoma knows what they're doing. I imagine he's a little bit better than that. I haven't had a chance to really go into his film like some of the other kids, like Norman and some of the other guys I've seen Under Armour camps or what have you. But he's a good athlete, I'm sure. The O-line is the other thing. I was a little surprised by this. Bedenbaugh is one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. In particular, the last 10 years or so when he's been there, I think he started in 2013. He's a guy that's built that reputation. They've ran the ball well. They've helped Heisman Trophy winners, etc. They've been really, really good. But they got the Deacon Schmidt kid out of Colorado. Really, really good football player. But they also have Noah Best, a kid from just outside of Dallas, Midlothian. I think that's a good start. But with Bill still there and Oklahoma's tradition, I'm a little surprised they don't have more guys pledged at this point. So that's a little bit surprising. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm surprised they don't have a DB that's like any elite kid committed right now. That defense is a lot of fun to play in. They've got a few kids that are committed, but they don't have that guy that I'm like, holy cow, this guy is going to be an instant impact player, etc. They do have Derek Johnson, a California kid. I have not seen him. I live in the South. He's a pretty good player based on what I see on the rankings, but I like the length most of all, and I obviously trust Venables and his staff with how they recruit defensive players. He's 6'2", 170 according to 247, but again, I have not seen him play. So overall, they've got the number 42 class, even with Bowe Bentley in it, who's awesome. I'll talk about him in just one sec. But that's just not good enough at Oklahoma. They should be higher on the board. They should have in-state commitments. They should have more balance. I'm curious to see what they get over the next 2 weeks as recruiting kind of slows down until we get towards National Signing Day, late November, early December. But right now, they're a little bit behind. And I think part of that is Venables being on the hot seat, but part of it is just odd. Even a hot seat coach at OU, no in-state commitment is mind-blowing to me. Now, as for Bowe Bentley, last year, the Salina, Texas quarterback made his first season as a starter into one to remember. They won the state championship. He has like 50 combined touchdowns, 5,000 yards, all this. He's an incredible player. I get asked all the time, hey, do you think he can come in and start for us? He could if you want to lose. Freshman quarterbacks are bad news in the SEC. Don't ask for that. If he ends up doing it and doing well, he will be the exception, not the rule. Year two, I'm totally down for him being the guy at OU. You need a year to adjust from the prep to college level. I think he will be outstanding. He's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country overall, in my opinion, because he's so dynamic inside and outside the pocket. He makes guys miss to get a pass off, and he will take off and burn you. RPO, quarterback lead, draws, anything you can imagine. His feet will be a weapon for the Oklahoma Sooners. So great prospect. They also have a lot of other players that are good in this class. Again, they've got about 14 kids committed. It's a good class, but I just thought there would be more of it and more in state. So with that, we'll see what happens with Oklahoma coming up here pretty soon. They should hit a point where they've got to get a few more kids committed to really evaluate, but I'm doing this evaluation before July 15th. So it's not fully through the recruiting spell where we get all the commitments. We'll see what happens. And I'll talk about it more on the Portal Podcast, especially on the Shorts page on YouTube when they get commitments or anything goes on with recruiting. When we come back, I want to talk about Venables, the hot seat, the 25 schedule, and make my prediction. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? maybe it's game day, and you suddenly realize you want to be at the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes into play. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, even invite a bigger group to come up with you. Game Time makes all of that possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually go down as you get closer to the first pitch, and they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying any tickets. Game Time is something that is very easy, and I'm not a guy that's very patient because you can do it from your phone. You can type in a team name, LA Dodgers, it can be Texas Rangers, whatever it is. You go see what the next game is, you click on it, and you pick a seat, and you will see the view right there. It's very, very simple with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in. I'm going to be talking more Oklahoma Sooners right here. I think this is a very unique season. I know OU fans have these super high expectations, and that's why Venables is on the hot seat. They didn't win enough games last year. There were concerns about how the situation went down, but they had so many injuries. I don't know what you expect. I was personally at the Oklahoma at Auburn game. That was wild. They get the late rally to win. Hawkins makes that deep ball throw. Sometimes you just have to find a way to win to gut out some games, but their schedule killed them. I'm just going to be the first one to say it today, and you've probably thought about it and or heard it sometime recently. The difference between the Big 12 and SEC schedule is pretty much night and day. Oklahoma just had better talent than everybody in the Big 12, other than Texas. They were pretty even, but everybody else, they just ran over. They just did. Those days are over with. If Oklahoma fans automatically assume 10-win seasons or better are just going to happen in the SEC, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be more difficult to recruit because in-state, while they should be doing better than they are now, it's not the same as what it is at Georgia, at LSU, at Florida, at Alabama, etc. They're going to have to manufacture things, and they're going to have to find a way, even with Steve Sarkisian at Texas, who's doing a really good job. I know you all hate Texas. They're recruiting well. He's an elite coach. You're not going to get as many Texas kids as you used to that were the elite kids. That's reality. They're going to have to find a way to manufacture more recruiting wins. And again, that's another reason I think they should recruit in state to get over the hump. They may have to take a couple of JUCO kids here or there. There's nothing wrong with that to get there. But for now, the biggest thing they got to do is find a way to manage their schedule. And I just want to kind of talk about this. For those of you on YouTube, you can see this, but I've got Oklahoma, just like an overview here. This is a pretty basic view of what's going on with them. Venables, you got Arbuckle obviously coming in with John Mateer, what's going on with in-state recruiting. All these things are talked about, but that schedule is the big thing. If you look at the schedule, and like that schedule is crazy. So I want to just focus on that for a second. There are 2 games early that you have to find a way to win so that you go into the Texas game. I believe it's number 6 on the schedule. If you can go into that game 5-0, you got a chance for a successful season. I'll talk about the back 7 in a second, but going into that game is important. 5-0. Okay, we'll talk about the Red River rivalry momentarily. Number 1 here. They have to find a way to beat Michigan. They should. It's at home, but Michigan's got a good staff. Everybody's down on them because they got all the investigation stuff going on. That's an interesting game. I don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. I really don't. They got a transfer quarterback that I'm familiar with. I used to cover UCF. He's a good player, Mikey Keene. But is he going to be the guy to help you win with not necessarily a great wide receiver room? I don't know. Bryce Underwood is the guy they just spent, 10.5, 12 million, whatever it was, all that money, maybe the best recruit in the class of 25. But that game is pivotal. And then 2 weeks later, Auburn, the game I mentioned a minute ago, you host the Auburn Tigers, a team that is in disarray recruiting-wise. I think they're like 90th. Their coach is a little bit on the hot seat too, and they're coming off a season they won 5 games. You got them at home. You have to win that game. If those two things happen, then there's more possibilities here. But for those of you thinking 10-win season this year, think about their schedule for a moment. It is absolutely daunting. I don't know how they come up with schedules for any conference, let alone the SEC, but they got the Texas game on October 11th, okay? And then after you play OU versus Texas game, you've got the following. The next weekend, you go to South Carolina, one of the surprises in college football last year with Lenora Sellers. The week after, you come home to play Ole Miss. They've got a really talented roster. The receiver room, running back room, all that stuff is good. I'm telling you, Austin Simmons, the quarterback, watch out. Tennessee is on November 1st. That's the next week on the road. Then you've got Alabama 2 weeks later. At least you get it prepared, but it is in Tuscaloosa. Then you have Missouri at home, and then you finish out the year with the LSU Tigers in Norman. That is brutal. If Brent Venables and his staff go 8-4 with this schedule, I think it would be a very good year. Jaden Gibson, I mentioned him earlier, coming back. You got Mateer, you got Jaden Ott. Like, who's going to be the guy? These are my questions. Who's going to be the guy that steps up as an offensive player to be that, hopefully healthy, by the way, be that playmaker? Is it Ott? I've seen him, and he's athletic. He's really fast. He'll be playing for a much better offensive line than what he did when he was at Cal. Mateer is a dude. I love his film. I think he's the best player in the portal going to a team this year because for the college game, he is perfect. But they still have a lot of questions. Is the O-line ready? They got a bunch of seniors, and I really like Bedenbaugh, but are they ready to take that next step, be dominant again? Love the running back room, but any of the four, I think, can carry the rock and be really good. While I'm thinking of it, I want to make a basic comment here. I was looking at a depth chart. Having the room to have a guy as good as Taylor Tatum, maybe 4-string, like he was by some people's account, the number 1 running back in the country coming out of high school, to have him not even in your top 2, he's number 4 by one of the depth charts I'm looking at, you've got some serious running back talent. So if the O-line gets going, that might be really the biggest key. Maybe you can get past 8 wins. But that's going to be difficult. Like, again, that back 7, starting with the Oklahoma versus Texas game, Red River rivalry, that's rough. Secondarily, who's going to be the playmaker at wide receiver? Who's going to be healthy? There's no real guarantee there. We'll see. But I think that will be a very big challenge. Also, last year they were a very dominant defensive team. Here are the stats. They give up 21.5 points a game, 29th in the nation, really good. Run defense, only 115.1 yards per game allowed, also very good, 24th in the nation. Pass D, it was the lowest of their group of main categories, 203.2. That is 43rd in the nation, but total defense, 318.2 yards per game, 19th. They're really good. And they were thrown into the fire constantly because the offense was 3 and out, they were terrible. That would have been a top 10, top 15 at the worst defense if they would have got normal reps, normal time on the field. They were just constantly on the field. That's a team that could get better just by not turning it over and just scoring. Like if Oklahoma averages just 4 more points a game offensively, maybe they do get to 9 wins. But again, it's the schedule. They're going to play against some really good quarterbacks. They're going to play against teams that have a lot of talent and depth too. So I'm curious about that. When we come back, I'm going to give my final prediction for the Oklahoma 2025 record and what I think is next for Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners. Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners are in a challenging situation. Defense, I still expect to be good. They've got a lot of guys back. David Stone, Jaden Jackson, Dominic Williams. They got talent. Like the D-line is going to be really good. I'm curious if they can replace Danny Stutzman. He had 109 tackles. And can they stay healthy on offense? Surely it's going to be better. But all that combined, I'm picking OU to go 8-4. And the reason I'm picking 8-4 is very simple. There's just too many hard games. They're not better than Texas. I know Oklahoma fans don't want to hear that. They're not better than LSU. They're not better than some of these teams. Like Michigan's at least similar to them. And that's just a common game. Ole Miss, Tennessee, they're not better than Alabama. There's too many potholes. And I think at the back end of the schedule, it's going to be very difficult to stay healthy, stay fresh, and go play those last few games. Even Missouri, which is a quality program, you get them right before you play the Bayou Bengals. That's a rough way to go. If they surpass it, I want to give you 2 reasons they go beyond 8 wins. Number one is the injury bug. It needs to flip. A lot of that's just luck, but it was insane what happened to Oklahoma last year. I have no idea why that did, but that has to flip. Number 2, there has to, and I don't know how you really do this, but Ben Arbuckle brings in John Mateer with him to Oklahoma. Really, really good combination. That offense at Washington State doing different things, it's impressive. Mateer had 15 rushing touchdowns last year. I think if you go and you run the ball consistently, you got Ott, you've got some other good players. Like, again, you got Tatum, like, coming off the bench. That's a really good group. I would imagine you're probably going to have to find a way to mix it in, but can Mateer find a receiver or 2 that he's consistent with and finds that balance? If they do that, they can get above 8-4 if everything falls just right. But that schedule is brutal. So I finish with this. Be careful for what you ask. Oklahoma is a really great job, but if you get rid of him, like if he goes 8-4, 7-5, and you guys fire the head coach, what are you going to get after? Be careful for what you ask. I'm sticking with 8-4. There's a lot of discussion points about it. I think Venables is a pretty good coach, but this situation right now is difficult. You need to get through this year and next year, but Bowe Bentley get rolling, then you'll be good. It's not what you want necessarily, but be careful for what you ask. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your latest recruiting intel. And as I break down several different teams, this is just one. I'm going to be doing one every day. Oklahoma and a whole bunch more coming at you. Thank you again. We will see you again soon on the Portal.